All right, so how does God use flawed people to accomplish his purpose? I think that's pretty much all we've seen so far is flawed people. God shows flawed in Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Joshua. Why? We're all flawed, so we all fit in that category. No, I was going just through the patriarchs, not through the judges. That's okay. That's a good list, though. All right, who knows the new memory verse? We know she does. She did it last week. Who would like to read the memory verse? Psalm 34, 17, and 18. If you guys didn't read your prepare section before today, there's a good list of the judges in there and the time that they judged over the nation of Israel. So, last week we continued looking at the period of the judges and the account of God who used Gideon to fight against the Midianite army. The Midianite army, what was it, 135,000 men. And Gideon raised up an army of 30,000 men. How many men did God send to fight? 300. 300 men. Because they were the most elite soldiers in Israel, right? They were the worst. They couldn't even drink from a stream correctly. Yeah. It was so that they wouldn't take credit for the victory. Like Ed said, they'd have to give it to God. The people followed for Gideon for a little bit. Then they fell back into idolatry, go back through the same things. So did Gideon. He fell into idolatry. Today we're going to look at Samson. Before, we're going to give you a quick summary over the judges we're about to skip. One is Gideon's son, Abimelech. He kills 70 of his brothers. Yeah, I thought it was 69. This says 70, but I think I always thought there were 70 of them, and he killed 69. So that he'd be number one. Gideon ended up sinning and taking a whole bunch of wives and having a whole bunch of kids, and then he had one kid, Abimelech, I think outside of marriage, if I remember correctly. So he killed all of his brothers so that he's next in line.
Was he the baby of the family?
Yeah. Or the black sheep, at least, because he wasn't official. So he wipes them out. Tola and Jair. Then they judged for about 50 years. Then there was Jephthah. Anybody remember him? He made a rash vow that come back to bite him. Yep. If God would give him the victory, he would sacrifice the first person that walked out of the house. And the first person to walk out of his house was his young daughter. And then we go through Ibzan, Elon, and Abdon, who judged for collectively about 25 years. Now, chronologically, Judges overlaps with Ruth and 1 Samuel, which we'll look into over the next few weeks. But today, let's start with Samson. Start in Judges chapter 13. I'll read verses 1 through 25. And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. There was a certain man of Zorah, of the tribe of the Danites, whose name was Manoah. And his wife was barren, and she had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Behold, you are barren and have had not borne children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Therefore, be careful and drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb. And he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. Then the woman came and told her husband, A man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of the angel of God. Very awesome. I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. But he said to me, Behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. So then, drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean. For the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. Then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, O Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come again to us, and teach us what we are to do with the child who will be born. And God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman as she sat in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. So the woman ran and told her husband, Behold, the man who came to me the other day has appeared to me. And Manoah arose and went after his wife, and came to the man and said to him, Are you the man who spoke to this woman? He said, I am. And Manoah said, Now, when your words come true, what is it to be the child's manner of life, and what is his mission? And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, Of all that I have said to the woman, let her be careful. She may not eat of anything that comes from the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink, or eat anything unclean. All that I have commanded her, let her observe. Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, Please let us detain you and prepare a young goat for you. And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, If you detain me, I will not eat of your food. But if you prepare a burnt offering, then offer it to the Lord. For Manoah did not know that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, What is your name, so that when your words come true, we may honor you? And the angel of the Lord said to him, Why do you ask my name, seeing it is wonderful? So Manoah took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it on the rock to the Lord, to the one who works wonders. And Manoah and his wife were watching. And when the flame went up toward the heaven from the altar, the angel of the Lord went up in the flame of the altar. Now Manoah and his wife were watching, and they fell on their faces to the ground. The angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and to his wife. Then Manoah knew that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to his wife, We shall surely die, for we have seen God. But his wife said to him, If the Lord had meant to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering at our hands, or shown us all the things, or now announced to us such things as these. And the woman bore a son and called his name Samson. And the young man grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir in Mahanadan between Zorah and Ashtul. So what familiar pattern do we see in verse 1? Follow the prophet, fall into sin, raise up a prophet. In this case, they call them judges. Rinse and repeat. Israel's history. What group is oppressing them? The Philistines. What do we know about Manoah's wife? She's barren.
We don't know her name. I couldn't find her name.
You don't get a whole lot of names in this story. Of all the women, you get one. That's it. Who appeared to Manoah's wife? What was his message? She's going to bear a child, and she's going to do what's called a Nazirite vow. She's going to do it herself, and her son will be under it from birth till death.
You think she got a nudging to name him Samson, or was that her own idea?
I'm guessing a nudging, because if you look at the Hebrew meaning of the names, they all seem to fit, whatever purpose they have. What was the instructions to her for the child? Never shave, never drink strong wine or eat of the fruit of the vine, no strong alcohol. It's what we call the Nazirite. It's found in Numbers chapter 6, verses 2 through 8. Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when either a man or a woman makes a special vow, the vow of the Nazirite to separate himself for the Lord, he shall separate himself from wine and strong drink. He shall drink no vinegar made from wine or strong drink, and shall not drink any juice of the grapes or eat grapes, fresh or dried. All the days of his separation he shall eat nothing that is produced by the grapevine, not even the seeds or the skin. All the days of the vow of separation no razor shall touch his head, until the time is completed for which he separates himself to the Lord. He shall be holy. He shall let the locks of his hair of his head grow long. All the days that he separates himself from the Lord, he shall not go near any dead body, not even for his father or for his mother, for his brother or for his sister, if they die, shall he make himself unclean, because his separation to God is on his head. All the days of his separation he is holy to the Lord. So that's the Nazirite vow. That's what you can and cannot do. Repeatedly. Yeah, more so the lion. Yeah. When he reaches into the lion carcass to pull the honey out to eat it. Yeah, he breaks the vow multiple times in multiple ways. So what would this child of theirs do? Samson. Begin to deliver them from the Philistines. How long is his Nazirite vow? Till death. Now, Manoah didn't hear the initial command, so he asked that God sends the angel back, or the man back. How did God respond to that request? He sends them back. What additional restriction do we read about in verse 14 that isn't in the first account? It's where it adds the rest of the Nazirite vow. Nothing from the vine. No grapeseed, no grapeseed oil, no grapes, no raisins. What did Manoah want to do to honor the man of God? Wants to fix him a feast. Who'd that remind you of? Or is it just me? Back to Abraham. It was Sarah when the Lord came with his angels and they fixed him a feast. How'd the angel respond? You can make me stay, but I won't eat. Do it as a sacrifice, an offering before God. What about when he asked him his name? His name is Wonderful, is all he would tell him. If you have different translations, there's different words they use there. Wonderful, incomprehensive, too wonderful to understand, secret, depending on which translation you use, but that's what that word means. The point is that the name is one that would be full of wonder and beyond comprehension, reflecting God's character. So what happened with the goat and grain offering? The fire consumes them and goes up to heaven. What else went with it? The angel. So how do they respond when they see the angel ascend? fell on their face and worshipped in fear. So then, who was the angel of the Lord, and how do we know? Jesus. It's another Christophany, a pre-incarnate Christ. When did Manoah realize that he had seen God? Not until he ascended through the fire. What was his wife's reaction? Or his reaction? We're going to die because nobody can look upon God and live. And his wife calms him down. Settle down, we'd be dead already if God wanted to kill us. Yeah, probably did. They just didn't record that. Yeah, he didn't listen to you, he didn't believe you. Lots of people have seen God, Jesus incarnate, and not died. This isn't God the Father down on earth. I will argue that God the Father has never been on earth since Adam. When Adam walks in the garden with God, I would argue that's a pre-incarnate Christ. Why? Because he doesn't say, who are you, when he sins and he sees him in the garden. Like he doesn't know who that person is all of a sudden. It's the same person he's been talking to. And if he didn't die when he saw them, it has to be a pre-incarnate Christ, because if it was God the Father, done. The closest to God the Father is Moses on Mount Sinai when he gets to see a glimpse of him out of the corner of his eyes. He passed. That help? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in that sense, you can see God. As the Father, no. If we went before the throne of the Father right now in the condition before we're saved, we're done. It's over. If he stepped foot on earth, all mankind would pass away. So after Samson's birth, how was God involved in his life? Blessed him, and the Spirit grew in him. Guess I wasn't done with that. All right, so now let's move through the rest of the narrative by looking at some of the passages, starting in Judges 14. Do 1 through 7. Samson went down to Timnah, and at Timnah he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines. Then he came up and told his father and mother, I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines at Timnah. Now get her as my wife. But his father and mother said to him, there is not a woman among the daughters of your relatives or among all the people that you must go take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she is right in my eyes. His father and mother did not know that it was from the Lord, for he was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines. At that time, the Philistines ruled over Israel. Then Samson went down with his father and mother to Timnah, and they came to the vineyards of Timnah. And behold, a young lion came towards him, roaring. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and although he had nothing in his hand, he tore the lion in pieces as one tears a young goat. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she was right in Samson's eyes. So who's Samson want to marry? A Philistine. Is Samson allowed to marry a Philistine? No. And he's supposed to be.
She also had to be beautiful.
Yes, she has to be beautiful. That's what it means by she was right in my eyes. She was good to look at. So he didn't care that she was outside of God's plan, outside of God's command, because she's pretty and I want to marry her. But what was God's plan for this marriage? he's going to use this as an opening for him to oppose the Philistines. How in this text was Samson's strength demonstrated? Where your bare hands tore a lion apart. Everybody been to a zoo and seen a lion? They're massive. They got, yeah, a couple years old. Big. Young, full of strength, vigor. And also when they're younger adolescents, they're meaner. They're less tame. Yeah. So the younger makes it worse. But he just tears it apart with his bare hands. 2-inch claws these things have. That's a crazy amount of strength. But how was he able to do it? What's the text say? The Spirit rushed upon them. So it was by the power of God. Next section we're going to move down to is verse 18. Samson arranges the marriage, went into the wedding for the bride, held a 7-day feast. During this time he puts forth this riddle. Put your riddle that you may hear. And he said to them, out of the eater came something to eat, out of the strong came something sweet. This was Samson's riddle that they had to figure out. And they all involved some amount of clothing that if they won, he had to give them. If he won, they had to give him. Goofy wagers on a wedding day, I guess. So they're trying to figure out the riddle, and they go to his bride to try to get the answer. I think that's where we pick up in 18. And the men of the city said to him on the 7th day before the sun set, what is sweeter than honey and what is stronger than a lion? And he said to them, if you have not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon and struck down 30 men of the town and took their spoils and gave the garments to those who had told the riddle. In hot anger, he went back to his father's house. And Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best friend. So, they pressured his wife. His wife told him the answer to the riddle. So therefore, he lost a bet, which meant he owed 30 pieces of clothing. He didn't have it. So he went and killed 30 people, took the pieces of clothing, offered them, and instead of going to his wife's house, he went home to his parents. When he did that, the father gave his daughter to another man.
We don't know that companion's name.
Just that it was his best friend. Or at least he thought so. After some days, at the time of the wheat harvest, yes. Yes. He was a judge, and he did all this. And he's not done yet. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nope, he was a judge over Israel to rescue him from the Philistines. But severely, severely fallen. After some days, at the time of the wheat harvest, Samson went to visit his wife with a young goat. And he said, I will go into my wife in the chamber. But her father would not allow him to go in. And her father said, I really thought that you utterly hated her, so I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister more beautiful than she is? Please take her instead. And Samson said to them, this time I shall be innocent in regard to the Philistines when I do them harm. So Samson went and caught 300 foxes and took torches. And he turned them tail to tail and put the torches between each pair of tails. And when he had set fire to the torches, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines and set fire to the stacked grain and the standing grain, as well as to the olive orchards. Then the Philistines said, "Who has done this?" And they said, "Samson, the son-in-law of Timnite, because he has taken his wife and given her to his companion." And the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. And Samson said to them, "If this is what you do, I swear I will be avenged on you, and after that I will quit." And he struck them hip and thigh with a great blow, and he went down and stayed in the cleft of the rock at Edom. So how's the father-in-law try to get rid of Samson's anger? Yeah, take my other daughter. What does Samson do? Catches 300 foxes. That's the same question I asked. How do you go and just catch 300 foxes? But Samson did. Yeah, Chuck Norris of the Old Testament. He goes and catches 300 foxes, ties them up, puts a torch between their tails, sets their tails on fire, lets them go. They run through the wheat harvest, which is at harvest, which means it's dry, and it all goes up in flames. All the food they're grown and all the food they stored burns. So what did the Philistines do? Her dad and the wife caused all this. They went and set them on fire. At the end, how does Samson respond? Strikes him with a great blow to the hip and to the thigh. In battle, that would be a devastating blow. That means the soldier is no longer operable at all. If you take out the hip and the thigh, they're done. So that's all the more we know that Samson did, is utterly devastate whoever he was going up against there. So in these passages, you see the back and forth sequence beginning to take shape. Samson and the Philistines. Samson sought some refuge in Judah, but the men of Judah took him captive and turned him over to the Philistines, who were camped against him at Lehi. That brings us to Judges 15, starting in verse 14. We'll do 14 through 16. When he had came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting to meet him. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and the ropes that were on his arms became as flax that had caught fire, and his bonds melted off his hands. And he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, and he took out his hand and took it, and with it he struck 1,000 men. And Samson said, "With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps, with the jawbone of a donkey have I struck down 1,000 men." So how does he get out of the ropes? You picture that? How strong he must have been to be bound and just like you're wrapped in paper. Just rips it right off. It's like they melted away, yeah. But that's just a way of saying he took his arms and pulled it apart like he was tied together with grass. The strength that this God gave this man is incredible. So what weapon does Samson use? Just a jawbone. Nothing spectacular, and he wipes out 1,000 people with it. You're lucky 2-on-1 to win. 3-on-1's gonna, 5-on-1, you're gonna lose. It's 1,000-on-1, and he wipes them out with a bone. So, chapter 16. After this, he cries out for water. God gives him water from a rock. Then we move into 16, verses 1 through 3. Samson went to Gaza, and there he saw a prostitute and went in her. The Gazites were told, "Samson has come here." And they surrounded the place and set an ambush for him all night at the city gate. They kept quiet all night, saying, "Let us wait till the light of the morning, then we'll kill him." But Samson lay till midnight, And at midnight he arose and took hold of the doors of the gate and of the city and the two posts, and he pulled them up, bar and all, and put them on his shoulders and carried them to the top of the mountain that is in front of Hebron. So what sin does Samson commit here? With a prostitute. Hmm? Nazarites should not be around dead people, so. I think the dead people thing, he's allowed to battle. He's not allowed to clean the battlefield. You know, so he's allowed to fight because God sends him into all these circumstances where he's going to fight. I mean, God put him with them 1,000 people. But if he'd have stayed, like, if his brother dies, he can't go to the funeral and tend the body. If there's a dead carcass on the side of the road, like a lion with a honeycomb in it, you can't go digging around and eating. It's more that side of it. All right, so we're about out of time, so I'm going to rush through the end. So he sins with this. He escapes by just grabbing the gate. Now he's protected by a giant metal gate and 2 giant posts that probably weigh 10 times as much as he does, and he walks them up the mountain so that it's hard to hit a man with a sword when you got a gate on your back. He just rips it out of the ground and walks away. You could do a Schwarzenegger movie out of this, yeah. And then he meets Delilah, the only woman we get the name of in his whole account, Delilah. And Delilah loves money more than she loves him. 5 kings that we hear about for the 5 Philistine tribes offer her 1,100 silver pieces. So a lot of money, 5,500 silver pieces. She'd have been very, very, very rich. So she intimately gets him to lay on her lap and fall asleep and shaves his head. So where's Samson get his power from? God. But he believes it's his hair. And he sinned enough that the Spirit's not with him, because here he is again. They shave his head. He walks out to fight him like he always does, and they beat him. And when they beat him, they take their thumbs and gouge his eyeballs out of his head. And then they tie him to a grain mill and let him walk in circles in prison to tread grain. The story ends. They bring him in for laughter and entertainment at a big party with 3,000 prominent Philistines. And they're up on top, and he's chained down below, and he asks God for the strength one more time, and he tears the pillars down, and the whole thing falls, and he ends up killing more people in one act than he has so far in his life by collapsing the building. So does God use severely flawed people to accomplish his will? Still does today, because we're all severely flawed. Lucky for us, ours aren't on paper for everybody else to read about, like Samson. I'm sure nobody would want that, but we look at Samson and go, really? Put one of our lives up there, we'll say the same thing. Really? Really? So God uses flawed people because that's all we got. We're all flawed. All right, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for using us despite of us. Even in all our flaws, we cannot hinder your will or your way. Your plan will come to fruition no matter what stands in your way. We praise you for your power and your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.